Welcome to the Driver's Line. I'm Greg.
And I'm Jordan.
And today, we've got a conversation for you.
Today's conversation features some very famous star cars.
Star cars, and by this, of course, we mean cars that have been in movies, TV shows, books, anything like that.
Absolutely. So,
all are open for choosing, and we've each chosen 3.
That's right. So hopefully we don't have too much overlap here. Yeah. Although you're a little older than me, so you probably...
That is true. Mine are more like 18 and things of that nature, but we'll see. We'll see. We're both young at the roughly the same time.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
Might have a show or two in common. We'll see.
Probably. No, us. All right. Would you like to start or me?
I'll kick us off.
All right.
So, my first car is actually a movie car.
Okay.
And it's a movie that was remade from the 70s.
Oh.
So it was originally a 70s movie, came out right around the turn of millennium. I think it was around 2000, 2001-ish.
Okay. All right.
Nicolas Cage was a star.
Okay. I think I know where you're going with this.
He had to steal 50 cars in one night. And of course, I'm talking about Gone in 60 Seconds. And if you're familiar at all with this movie, you're going to know that the star car in this is a 1967 Shelby GT500.
Beautiful car.
Known as Eleanor.
That's right.
Finished in DuPont Pepper Gray. It was just one of those cars that was just like outstandingly beautiful. And just to go back into the movie lore just a touch, you know, Nicolas Cage gave the name Eleanor to every car that he stole that he thought might be trouble. And so this was the last one that he stole in the movie, and of course went on this massive chase all around Los Angeles with the police on his tail. Had so many great quotes from the police chasing him. That it had the infamous "Go Baby Go" red button inside of it for the nitrous, and so he hit that, and he's being chased by a helicopter, and the guy's like, "You're losing him! You're losing him!" He goes, "This is an Airstar, sir, not an Apache." And they see him zip it around, and one police officer says to the other, he's like, "Man, that guy can drive." And the guy's like, "What?" He's like, "It's probably mostly the car."
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I mean, Eleanor just goes beyond that movie. I think that's something that, all these cars probably have in common, is that they stand alone even without their franchise.
Oh, 100%.
And
this is a car that you've probably seen replicated at auto shows for the last 20 years.
Oh,
because so many people will love it so much they'll take a 1967 Mustang or 66, or frankly, and then just go ahead and as long as it's a fastback, they can go ahead and make a perfect Eleanor clone.
I think that's really true. I mean, how many of them do you see? I mean, even from a person who's not necessarily a huge Mustang guy, I would love to own a car like that.
To own one, yes. And I mean, Steve Sanford was the one who actually designed the body kit for it, and I mean, it's just probably made bukus of bucks in the aftermarket. Hopefully those guys are at least paying him for his creation, because I mean, it's just a timeless classic design. And it's one of those designs that I thought, at least, just marries both some modern design elements with the classic design elements of the 67 Shelby.
I think that's really well put. It almost looks like a resto mod type
deal. It really does. It's just, I mean, it's just very, very cool, beautiful car. As soon as I saw it in the movies when I was, much younger, I was like, I need one of those.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
Need a bigger garage.
I know, that's the problem. I always need a bigger garage.
That's a great pick. That's a great pick.
Thanks.
Well, I will tag on to a little bit of what you talked about, but really in a completely different realm. Cars that love to be replicated, right? So obviously, Eleanor has been replicated dozens and dozens and dozens and probably hundreds of times over. I'm going to talk about a car that actually has its own following on many different social media platforms. Even has directions on how to replicate it that I've found. All right.
What van are we talking about this time?
It's not a van. Although close. Certainly not as fast as Eleanor.
Oh.
All right.
Sure.
So a lot of times when we think about famous star cars, they have superpowers. Eleanor with all her driving ability.
Yes, that's right.
And some other ones that we'll be discussing soon. But this particular choice doesn't necessarily go towards the enthusiast, but it really stands out on its own. So in the 90s, Ford came out with its Explorer, all right, and it took the market by storm. So much so that when it was decided by Steven Spielberg to adapt the book Jurassic Park into a movie, they actually strayed away from the Toyota Land Cruiser, which is mentioned in the book, to the Ford Explorer, because it was such a prominent force in the market. So obviously what I'm referring to are the Jurassic Park Ford Explorer vehicles. And the reason I bring this up is they really stand out a lot. It was almost kind of a nod to some future vehicle options that we have nowadays. I mean, they have optical sensors in the front to pick up animals that might be in front of you, right?
Yeah,
and
it was on a track, but it was also kind of self-driving.
It was self-driving,
right?
Right, it was, yeah. No, there's not really a mention actually about what the track does because it doesn't power the vehicle.
Nope.
It doesn't steer it because it's the sensors that do that.
That's right.
It's just there maybe to make some connections to what people are used to at amusement parks, right?
Probably.
But yeah, it does. It's kind of a forebear of a lot of the features that we see. So like the self-driving that we mentioned, lots of sensors everywhere.
And they were electric, right?
They were electric.
Yep.
It had a bubble top roof, so basically every car nowadays has a panoramic roof, right?
Yes, every single SUV.
So even though they're not necessarily fun to drive, it was kind of like a forebear of what we see in today's market. And you see so many people not only trying to replicate the Ford Explorer of that time in that movie, but also the Jeep Wranglers that were popular in that movie. It really brought, for something that wasn't really supposed to be a big part of the movie itself, that brought this vehicle forward into like the minds of so many people, not only in the United States but around the world. Right, that was a global franchise.
So that's a great choice. I mean, everybody loved those when they came out. I mean, and when Lost World came out, I was so disappointed to see those Mercedes.
Yeah, I know.
They just look so stupid by comparison to the Explorer. Explorer just had the classic paint scheme, and I love the Wranglers as well. The Wranglers had that classic paint scheme, and like Eleanor. Plenty of people have replicated those and made those paint schemes. You'll see those at car shows. And I mean, it's just so much fun when you see it because it just brings you right back to that movie.
It does.
And I mean, to me, the scene that I always remember, like car related, is, well, there's two. First one is when the Tyrannosaurus Rex was coming at him, like, going through the bubble roof. You know? And the second one was when the T-Rex was chasing the Jeep and objects seemed mirror closer than they appear.
Love it.
I mean, again, it's Spielberg, so the bar is way up here, and he just absolutely crushed it in every single regard with that movie.
Absolutely.
But yeah, maybe, you know, Elon Musk, I know you're struggling with your FSD. Maybe you can call up Spielberg and he'll tell you how it works.
There you go. Gotta go for the Elon Musk dig.
All right, my next choice, I'm going to pivot to TV.
Okay, all right.
So this is from one of my, favorite trios. They initially started off as the hosts of Top Gear and then moved to Amazon Prime, where they started hosting the Grand Tour.
Very nice.
And so this is from one of their Grand Tour episodes when they did what they called a massive hunt. And so in this episode, they started off at Réunion and then they went down to Madagascar. And the premise of the show was they were going to hunt the treasure of a pirate named Labous. And apparently somewhere measured around Madagascar, apparently the big area for piracy, you know, way back in the day. And Madagascar not known for its great roads, as you might imagine. So they each had to modify their vehicles. And I wanted the one that Jeremy Clarkson modified. He had a Bentley Continental GT V8. So not the W12 model, but it was the V8 model. After he modified it, it became known as the MFB.
Can we talk about what that stands for?
Well, we'll talk about two of the letters. We can't talk about one of them because this is a family program. Well, the first one was mother. F. Bentley. So he took this gorgeous Bentley Continental GT V8, raised the suspension, put fat tires and wheels on it for off-road, put a snorkel on it, finished it with like this anti-scratch paint green coating. Looked phenomenal. This thing looked the business. Since he had to put smaller wheels on it, he actually had to switch out the brakes. He put GTI brakes on it. Did you know?
Look at that.
Yeah, so good brakes that still work, but not as obviously big as the ones that come standard on the Bentley, because you really, when you're off-roading, you don't need to stop that fast.
Right.
And just made it like into like the most wonderful like off-roading overlanding vehicle that I've ever seen, because you see him in air-conditioned leather massage seating comfort. Meanwhile, James May was in a Caterham.
Yeah.
And like he's like out kicking mud up on himself in the elements, and Hammond's car kept breaking down, and I'm just like, that is what I want to do when I go off-road. I want to be swaddled in comfort and air conditioning in my Bentley.
The Bentley works.
Yes, and it worked. It was fantastic. I mean, it had one little issue along the way, but it was able to mend it, and it continued along and made the entire adventure.
So let me get this straight: when you take a Bentley Continental and basically turn it into a Bentley Continental Dakar.
Yes.
It turns into a MFB.
MFB. That is exactly right. And it was right. It was even before the 911 Dakar and the Huracan Storado came out.
Yeah. So he really broke new ground
They
there.
broke new ground. These massive automakers copied Jeremy Clarkson.
They did. Get him, Jeremy.
Get him, Jeremy. He created a new element.
That's a great pick. I forgot about that episode. It's so good.
That was so good. It's so much fun.
So
I
good.
love that episode.
Absolutely. You picked a British car for your last one. I'm going to do the same. Yeah, and it's a car actually that the boys from Top Gear really love. Comes from the brand of Aston Martin.
Aston
All right. So one of my favorite things to watch growing up, it's kind of like a bonding moment between my brother, myself, my dad. We all loved
a bonding moment.
James Bond. That's right. You got it. You got the pun. So there's not many cars that have the presence of the famous Aston Martin DB5, right? I mean, anytime you see that car, you immediately think James Bond.
100%.
There's
there's no other way.
comparison.
You see a silver DB5 running around. The first thing that comes to mind is James Bond. You're wondering when those little miniguns are going to pop out.
Yeah, so let's run through all the different accessories that the Aston Martin DB5.
I don't know how much time we have on this podcast, but we'll see.
We talked about the miniguns, machine guns,
Yes.
tire shredding blades.
Oh yeah, the little thing that popped up.
Don't forget about
Yes.
those. And I think those are basically like pop culture in some communities nowadays. But, we had a bulletproof screen that popped
Yes,
up
that came out the back. Yes, I
remember
remember
that?
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It had tracking equipment before tracking equipment was really a thing. So you could track other people that was around. An oil sprayer.
I remember the oil sprayer. That's how
right.
he got rid of some baddies chasing him.
That's right. A very famous, and I have a button for this in my Volkswagen GTI. It doesn't work, but it's there. I had to cover up the blank somehow. Ejector seat.
Oh,
The very famous ejector seat.
Yes.
So if there's a baddie next to you, you can pop them right out.
right out.
All right.
Yes,
They want
exactly.
to suspect the thing. Also, something that is apparently kind of common nowadays, very illegal, but nonetheless, revolving number plates.
yes.
Okay, so when you're driving around and you're chasing James Bond, I know I'm looking at the number plate. That's got to be really
100%.
important.
I'm not going to identify the vehicle by any other means. There's 100% going to be multitudes of silver DB5s running around.
Later on, it also added some water cannons, interestingly, and some mine deployment equipment as well. So, in that little tiny package, we had a car that was bulletproof.
Yes.
In many ways,
Obviously.
but also counteracted with several different weapons, but drove incredibly well.
Yes, of course.
But
I mean-
not to mention, looked fantastic.
You got
come on.
you got the engineering of everyone in Aston Martin, but then you have the engineering of Q.
That's right. That's right.
Was able
He
to
was
fit-
beyond everybody.
Package all of those things in there into all that space left by Aston Martin. Mm-hmm. Somehow, but he made it work.
The wonderful movie magic that is James Bond. right?
Exactly. But I mean, it's such a fantastic voice. It is a piece of pop culture. Anytime, to your point, when you see a DB5 running around, the first thing invariably that comes to mind is James Bond.
sure.
Frankly, when you see almost even any modern Aston Martin rolling around, you think James Bond. Those two are completely tied together in history.
Yeah, I mean, anytime Aston Martin comes out with a new debut, the DB5 is there as well. I mean,
right.
it's just part of their lineage.
It is.
you know?
It's just part of the lore.
Yeah.
So, absolutely love it.
Yeah.
All right. Third and final selection here.
Okay.
This is from a little known TV show that really spoke to people who loved cars.
Okay.
It was a show that was developed definitely in hand with our friends at Dodge.
Oh, we picked the same one. It always happens.
It always happens. But hey, this is only one. That's not too bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good. eh?
It's not like all three. But anyways, it was
Go
developed- it
ahead.
was co-developed
Go ahead
with
and
Dodge.
defend your choice here.
I'm going to defend my choice. But I don't want you to be snake bit when I come out and say it here. But of course, we're being a little punny here. But we were talking about the old TV show
Viper. That's right.
Yes, and so this was a TV show. What was the town called? Like Metropolis? No.
Well, it was based in L.A., right? So Metropole was the police department. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, but It was a show where you had basically a crime-fighting vehicle that was developed to go against all the baddies that were coming up in the area. And so you had the special team formed with this crime-fighting vehicle, and the vehicle, of course, was a 1994 Dodge Viper RT10
Yeah.
that could transform into the Defender.
The Defender.
Which was this silvery beast.
Yes. Looks.
With a roof.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't an RT10 anymore, it was more like a GTS.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
It's okay. We got a GTS later on in the
we
series.
did. Yeah, we did.
Season 3. They were like, oh yeah, we should probably do that, I guess. Would be
It
easier.
already had a roof, so this will be a little bit easier. You don't have to make a roof appear out of nowhere. But that's what we did.
Yeah, I mean, the Defender jacked up the suspension, and it added a litany
List. If you
of goodies.
thought there was a long list of James Bond inventions, oh, we've got a list for you now.
Yes, we do. Well, as we know, the RT10 famously was not four-wheel drive, but in Defender spec, we jacked up the suspension, and it had four-wheel drive.
Yeah, so it came with knobbly tires, too.
That's right. It was
Those
super
knobbly
knobbly
tires came out of
tires.
nowhere, and they came out of where. You also
Yeah.
had holographic projectors. So if you wanted to project something and confuse your baddies, you could do it too.
It's so 90s. It's amazing.
Yes, it was delightfully 90s.
Not to mention, it had a probe with a laser. How 90s is that? So
Yes.
you can get other stuff. How ridiculous.
And a little bit more straightforward, you also had battering rams that popped
Yes.
out of the front bumper.
Absolutely. You could take anything off the road. How about some retractable weapon pods so
Of
you can
course.
attach various different weapons? All right.
Yes.
You can talk about machine guns. Not to mention later on we had Stinger missiles.
Stinger missiles, baby. With all that empty space in the Viper. Put some Stinger missiles in there. Then, of course, obviously, it's armored.
Gotta be.
Gotta be armored, because you can just sit there and let the baddies shoot at you, and then pop out your weapons pods, and they run like chickens.
But not only weapons, why not pop out some flames too?
Yes!
Flamethrower in season 3.
And it would not be complete without the rear grapple hook.
That famous grapple hook.
Famous grapple hook. You can drive off a cliff, rear grapple hook.
There you go. I mean, there's so many cliffs in LA.
Tons of cliffs. Over the Hollywood sign, grapple
There you
hook.
go. Yeah, I mean, the premise of the show was pretty niche, I would say.
Oh, very, very campy and corny, like 100%. If you go back and watch it now,
I don't think you should.
don't.
Yeah,
Just,
I don't think you
if you
should.
watched it when you were a child, enjoy it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't really reboot it because the Viper's dead.
Yeah, sadly.
But it would be fun to see what they could do with modern day technology.
It would actually be very cool, yeah. A reimagined Viper, you know, maybe that's the reason the Viper died, was to reimagine the Defender program.
There you go.
Dodge, come on. You know you want to get back into the Hollywood game. Think about it.
Nothing could be better. Bring back our childhood.
Hey, that's what everybody does now, right?
I know,
Everything
exactly.
that's old is new.
That's true.
100%. So
Yeah.
the Defender can be new again.
Absolutely. We would love to see another Defender.
Yes, bring it back.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our episode on Star Cars.
Yeah, thanks for watching. And if you had any star cars that you thought we left off the list, we'd be interested to hear about them.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us on The Driver's Line.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss a thing.